Hello, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I am so grateful that you are here. Hello, Cancer rising, Cancer moon, Cancer sun. Welcome to your new moon astrology forecast. Our new moon is in your sign, June 28th, 2022 at just shy of 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So, welcome back, everyone. If you are new, this is your first time here, welcome. Thank you for stopping by. You may want to consider subscribing, certainly hitting that like button if you turn out to enjoy this content, and so that you know when I upload new videos to this platform. So, Cancer, you have a new moon in your sign, conjunct Black Moon Lilith, and it's in a square to Jupiter and Aries in the 10th house. So, we're going to look at the main astrological themes for your new moon leading up to the full moon in Capricorn, which will be on the 13th of July. So I would encourage you to also watch that video when I release it, because even though it will be primarily focused on the Capricorn person and the dynamics about their chart, and when it comes to the full moon, there's going to be so much overlap because this lunar cycle has a lot to do with the very nature of your subjective experience, who you are, and with your seventh house in Capricorn, as Capricorn is your seventh house, you are going through an identity change because of the shifting and destruction, ultimately the elimination and transformation of the realm of relationship for you because of Pluto. So we're going to talk about, like I said, the major themes. As you can see, Cancer, if you just take a really, general look at this chart here for Cancer rising, you will see that most of the action, other than the sun and moon, Lilith, and the moon's south node, and of course the moon is your celestial ruler, right? It represents the Cancer person. So we're going to look at that anyway, but to see that Black Moon Lilith, which is the lunar apogee, the moon, and then the south node of the moon, it's really the only representation you have right now at the bottom of your chart of individual identity and expression. All the action has been and will continue to be so in the larger, farther away outer planets, the transpersonal planets of Pluto, Saturn, Neptune, Uranus, I would even say Jupiter, the asteroid Chiron. All of these are going to be stationing retrograde or already retrograde. And so there is, even though there is a really strong concentration at the top of your chart of social expression and social identity, what we're going to find with this new moon and then going into the rest of this particular season is that there will be a journey through the bottom of the chart for Cancer people that has the potential to take you on a journey of a new version of self. And this is part of what this new moon is really setting up for, well, all of us, but for the Cancer person in particular. So when the full moon comes, which will be in Capricorn, it's going to be just as important to you. And in fact, there are some really strong overlaps with the Saturn-Pluto conjunction and what was happening in other parts of that chart. And that was January of 2020. So that was in the seventh house for Cancer people. The North Node was in Cancer at that time. So there's it's a temporal marker, this new moon to that period. And, anybody that has any interest whatsoever in astrology is probably very familiar with that Saturn-Pluto conjunction. That really crystallized the destruction process. And put a time stamp on it in a lot of ways. That's what Saturn truly does, and makes it very real and crystallized, a process of unraveling and destruction in order to create space for something new. So it was inevitable. And so that full moon will be worth a listen as well. So what I will say here is that because Pluto, Saturn, Neptune stationing right now, as of the 27th, Jupiter, Chiron, and Uranus, they're all going to be retrograde over the summer. And it's just going to keep, one after another of retrogrades. And so the social identity and the social expression is going to go through this internalized backward process with all of these retrogrades. And what you're going to find, like I said, is Mercury, Venus, the Sun, Moon are all going to journey through the bottom of your chart. You truly are coming into a new version of who you are, Cancer, which is really important because you embody in your very personality and who you are, even if Cancer Sun, Cancer Moon, especially any of these, because it's a new moon and that involves a Cancer Sun and a Cancer Moon in the first house for Cancer Ascendant. So regardless, you are coming into a phase where you're starting to really identify who you want to be, who you want to grow into, what really is the person you present to the world. And it will have this component with Lilith that is deep and primal, having to do with self-preservation. And when you're talking about Cancer, you're talking about the womb. You're talking about the space in which creation happens. And so esoterically, obviously, this is the High Priestess, and this is the darkness, right, in which creation happens. But archetypally, I mean, it is the womb. It's the family. The dark side of Cancer is, tribalism and the dark side of nationalism, and too insular, consolidating power to the point where it's really like strangling people or suffocating them. All of those things. Or dark sides of the Cancer archetype. But truly, it's about boundaries, emotional boundaries, and loyalty, protection, guardianship, right? Nurturing the womb, right? So this is maternity to a T. And so it's no accident that there are really charged issues coming up to the political social consciousness right at this moment that have to do with these subjects. And Lilith involved is making it feel like it is a matter of survival. So Cancer people, just be aware that Lilith will have her say regardless if you want to bypass her or not. And so it's important to be at least aware of those drives within you in terms of your subjective experience and how they are able to empower and inspire this new moon, as opposed to being a survivalist overlay that is really just based in something that is not conscious at all, but is just the eruption of a triggered trauma in some ways. It's very much part of everything that's happening right now. So you see that this new moon is in a square to Jupiter in the 10th house. You have Mars here. Chiron is here. Chiron just came into Aries at that Saturn-Pluto conjunction time in January 2020. So there again, this whole theme of Chiron in the sign of Aries, right? Where there's guilt and shame and a sense of, not being able to get out of this identity and just, repurposing it for, as a way to help other people, right? The wounded healer, but without the wound, who am I, right? It just builds and builds and builds on each other, or up, all of these expectations, right, around your identity. So these are themes. And what is this? This is the 10th house, your career, your mission, the release of your power, your professional and public life, right? What you are contributing to, what establishments are you contributing to? What is us, This first house is very fundamentally I am. The 10th house is, we are, and as a result of everybody's labor and contribution. And so it is the full pattern here. And that's, I think, been a very difficult place for Cancers, because I think the 10, especially right now, especially where Chiron is right now, there does feel like a tendency to either really pull in kind of almost a narcissistic way, right? To withdraw because it is too difficult to engage with the establishment or the institution or the industry that you're part of, right? The career that you have. It's more about the need to do this inner withdrawal to establish that you can create bioenergy yourself, right? Or you can create potential creative energy yourself, but it also can be it can be exploited so much in order to keep people from actually stepping forward and establishing relationship. And Cancer, I think this is a big theme for you because it's been very easy to be insular and very cut off and protected in some ways, especially when there is so much unknown and so much destruction and so much disappointment, all the things with Pluto. It's just so raw and powerful and in relationship, and that really does define you and who you are in those relationships, which is total boss mode, right? I mean, for the Cancer person, Saturn is ruling your 7th house, so without that stable Capricornian matrix to be set up to begin with, or going through its own process of destruction, how can you possibly step into that role with some confidence and authority? It's very difficult. And then Chiron in your house of mission, I think, has been just aggravating that so much. So Jupiter here, though, great manager, right? Great manager in the 10th house, loves to delegate and has the big picture. These are upper management all day, which is what everybody really just doesn't like. Because Jupiter can't get very far in the 10th house as Jupiter, right? Eventually you have to start actually doing some work and being part of the unfolding of the materium, whereas Jupiter is just a lot of hot air a lot of times, but does have a lot of managerial and big picture type of understanding of what's going on. When you can see the big creative picture and understand it, it's very easy to delegate, but it doesn't go much further than that. However, what this square to the 1st house is without this, the membrane of Cancer, right? Usually very watertight, right? You're talking about a vessel. You're talking about a womb, right? It has to be. It has to be secure. It has to hold, right? How else can you be vulnerable on the inside fully, which allows your sensitivity, your sense of community, your sense of responsibility and loyalty. All of those things grow and you become more sensitive internally, and your character develops because there is a stable form around you. But if that never allows any type of interaction with the outside, then it all, then you become insular. Then you become, on the dark side of like tribalism or the dark side of nationalism, and you get very into your own, your own traditions, your own lineage, and that becomes the only thing. So there needs to be, I think, a sense of permeability that Jupiter in the 10th house like this is going to establish, and it's gonna feel really weird, I think, because you don't want to let in all of the influence of this, especially if it's crumbling, right? The 10th house has a lot to do with the establishments and the larger institutions as a whole. But realize that Pluto in Capricorn is influencing your essence of relationship, right? Who are you when all of this falls away? Well, it really has a lot to do with finding yourself in the we are, and that changes. And I think Jupiter here is a reminder almost, or at least a big picture kind of wisdom here that's saying, there has to be a permeability to a certain extent to be influenced by what's here. Also, that goes the other side too. You don't want to be so influenced by the big picture and not any details that you don't actually start putting in the behavioral or action-oriented work to start acting in alignment with who you want to be, right? It's not all going to just come in and change the entire structure that you are contributing to, but there has to be some measure of doing something. But don't, there's Lilith here making it about survival almost, and Jupiter like, hey, allow in some influence spiritually and trust and have faith that perhaps you're not getting more that you can't handle in this moment. Again, Chiron here can really easily cut you off from society and have you not contributing to anything. And so Cancer, you're coming out of this. And it may seem a little difficult at first because I think there's been a lot of like really strong insular protectiveness over you for a while now. And, not wanting to engage with the social or career or society as a whole. Now, Uranus and the North Node are in your 11th house, so they're going to be conjunct this month. So just so you know that something spontaneous is erupting in the social fabric as a whole that you're part of. So just keep that in mind as well. And then Uranus will station retrograde, meaning it will go back over that point again, and then again. So, but its conjunction with the North Node of the Moon at this point is going to be pretty remarkable because it is pulling us. I mean, we're going to see something rising out of the undifferentiated soup of potential here that is going to maybe something that we hadn't anticipated, but something that is absolutely rising out of the ocean, a new continent rising out of the ocean. Wow. And maybe a new social sphere, that you spontaneously find yourself somewhere new, a completely different community, a completely different network in some ways. So that's something to consider as well. And you wouldn't have allowed for that, be open for that type of spontaneity in that way in a social setting. Perhaps if you hadn't allowed in some more influence, allowing the membrane to be a little permeable without completely letting yourself go. It's a delicate balance. But Cancer, I mean, look at your glyph. It's all about the balance has provided for a firm and strong foundation. So that's something to learn about yourself, that changes in the nature of your relationships do not mean that you are somehow not here or not who you are, but those things change as well. So that's the new moon. Now, Venus is a great outlet for this Jupiter in the 10th house that is, again, expanding to this semi-permeable membrane that is like just the winds of spirit coming through and just influencing just enough, right? Just enough to know that their spirit is there and that you're being attended to. It's so much part of the Starseed Ministry reading from today's broadcast. Venus in the 12th house, I mean, this is just generally a lot more value and meaning to the spiritual community and to the karmic closing out of stories, right? That the experience of the unseen is going to become something very physically palpable and certainly materially relevant. Excuse me. But also in Gemini, as we saw in the Starseed Ministry reading, if you're familiar with that, then you probably already saw it. If not, that's something you can scroll down and find. That was just from the 27th, Monday the 27th. So Venus in the air signs, there's a real strong propensity here to get caught up in the mental realm. And in Libra, it's great because Venus rules Libra, but in Gemini, there's a lot of mutability here that that can pull our sense of value and meaning and worth into the polarization and the dialectic. So there's something here, though, that is about undifferentiation, right? Like some sort of chaos that has to precede the creation of something new. And this, I think, this sextile to Jupiter is where we can really make the most. And for you, Cancer, it's going to be in these realms of social expression and specifically in the astral or the mystical, the unseen, or even as simple as the experience of the human collective, the meaning and value of chaos and undifferentiation is something that can be invested in some ways to allow for that. You wouldn't even realize that there was or the influence that's coming in from Jupiter, right, in this 10th house of the establishment, the career, the professional life, the public persona, is in some ways allowing for a return to a state of non-differentiation with Venus in the 12th house. And that's going to open up a lot of inspiration, potential inspiration, as opposed to getting caught in the square angle of who I am versus who we are and what's happening there. It's going to be a conflict no matter what, especially because, like I said, Cancer, you're going to want to like stay closed off, I think. And there's a lot happening in this 12th house. Now, speaking of which, Mercury is at home here, out of its shadow, out of the retrograde shadow, full steam ahead in your 12th house, right? Your mental activity is on point here in terms of establishing patterns, going deeply within your own mind, using your mind, a meditative state, a trance state to get into the unseen, the astral. You may find that the dream state or trance state may be that much more clear and differentiated. So interesting here as well. So there's full steam ahead here, right? And going into this space, and Venus here too now is making it a much more palpable experience in your five senses, right? And in your relationships and things that have value and meaning. But they're also with the experience of this or that, there is the in-between that Venus at 8 degrees Gemini really represents. And so that is, it's created in a lot of ways when you allow for the spirit to come through and inspire you. But that's only going to happen with a sacred space in which to receive that. And that's going to be a big part of the Cancerian experience of this new moon, you as the sacred space, and how you begin to act in accordance to you as a sacred space, because what comes from there in relationship is truly a function of who you are, because Pluto is just going to leave a space, right? Creation is the whole next cycle. So it is really up to us, and Cancer people in general right now, I mean, this is your month, right? This is your month to really step into who you are and the power that comes from that, the inner power that comes from that. So, we also see that Mars is in a sextile to Saturn in the 8th house. This has been just brutal, I'm sure, for you in particular, right? Because this is the area where your power is generated in relationship. And Saturn retrograde is just like, okay, I mean, it's really learning some hard lessons about this, but also becoming incredibly task-oriented, becoming incredibly powerful, secure, confident. Remember, Saturn rules your 7th house. So this is establishing a sense of real boundary and a sense of confidence and authority in the realm that is so hard to maintain that sense of boundary, which is the 8th house, right? Because you're sharing resources, you're sharing all kinds of resources. There's an element of trust and faith that has to be experienced in the 8th house. And this is where exploitation and betrayal will show themselves in the 8th house, because you are vulnerable to someone else. And again, in its retrograde, you may find yourself really wanting to create a strong boundary here. And there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, I think this is where the boundary with Saturn in your 8th is actually really important and necessary, because it is right now, especially establishing that boundary for yourself in this area and what it actually takes. The sextile to Mars, also in Aries in your 10th house, is conjunct Eris, the goddess of discord. And in your, this is coming into Andromeda Starseed territory, Andromeda Galaxy Starseed territory. Mars leading up to, this is going to be in the 4th of July weekend, where Mars will be exactly conjunct the Andromeda Galaxy from our perspective. So this is leading up to it. So again, the transmutation of these emotional energies, that Saturn is like a taskmaster, especially in its retrograde. It's like, okay, now you really see, we all see what we're truly made of in this realm. And for you in the 8th house, it's in the place you really need boundaries, because this is where power dynamics are. So if you are too cut off, if your shell is too thick, if it's too calloused, right, you're gonna be an Aquarian like Borg in this space, right? Now if it's too permeable, right, if you don't have good boundaries when you get into this space, then you find yourself just overwhelmed by the social voice or the collective consciousness in general, and really could be easily influenced, but also and not having that detachment in some ways, right? You just find yourself completely immersed in this realm, in whatever you're doing, right? There's no identity left here because there's no boundary, right? The boundary is gone. So Saturn is really establishing this in a very annoying way, right? But it's important. The sextile to Mars here is that there are two, there is new potential that exists here. And Mars in the 10th has really got that go-getter attitude, right? In terms of professional power and the release of power. And Mars has a lot of, is output of power, especially in Aries. So the potential to be in two places, experience in two places at once. The fact that, we can experience what we truly believe we can experience. I get the sense here that this sextile here is, for Cancer people, is, allowing for a release of energy, so you don't get too caught up. Again, this theme is coming around and around and around, that you don't get too insular, that you don't get too much of a boundary here, but you also want to protect yourself, and you also want to establish a firm boundary in this area, and a sense of confidence and authority here. It's Mars in Aries that's, it doesn't have to be, to remember that whatever is happening here, and it may seem like you're buckling under the pressure of your own experience here, Mars in the 10th house is, there's this action, right? And this, superhero energy here, that is trying again, right? That realizes that we can experience anything that we deeply believe we can experience. And Mars is acting in some ways on that, not belief, but the faith that is felt, the potential energy. And so, but that does, again, that seems to require in some ways an ability to transmute what is going on at this level of shared resources, whatever that is for you. That could be business resources, that could be domestic resources, that can be sexual energy, that can be any creative energy that, the power dynamics in any relationship are the 8th house. That could truly be the dark night of the soul, the relationship to yourself, the relationship to your shadow, depth psychology, all of these things. This is where you break out of this and you see what it's for. It's not to just get trapped in another like shell. It is to be able to express yourself, to act on your own behalf in terms of we are, right? That's where it's going. And Mars has got the courage and the and a sense of fearlessness and bravery, and in its own home territory of Aries is just like, let's go, right? Frontline. This is important. This is about being able to come out onto the front line, and not lose your sense of who you are, Cancer, right? You are just a marshmallow on the inside, and you also step into leadership in any type of relationship because of your capacity to protect and guard while also being completely sensitive, and very intuitive as well. So what's interesting about this chart, Cancer, and we'll look at kind of the themes moving through all of this as we kind of wrap up this report here, is that the moon over the course of the next 2 weeks is going to follow a pattern that's also going to show you the rest of this whole solstice cycle, which is very relevant to you, obviously, because the sun is at 0 degrees Cancer. So over the next 2 weeks, you have this, your ruling planet, quote unquote, your ruling body of the moon is going to go into all of the areas of your individual identity and your individual expression, so that you kind of get an impression internally and intuitively, certainly emotionally, of what the next 6 months may bring about in terms of discovering again who you are and who you're growing into. So I think that's really exciting for you. So if we were to look at and I mentioned this already, so I'm gonna go back just so you have a visual of this. If we go back to January of 2020, which is roughly about 2.5 years from now, we see that there is, let's see here, there is there we go. Oh, where did it go? There was the Saturn, there it is, Saturn and Pluto conjunction. So it just went past it. It was on January 11th. Between the 11th and the 12th. 22 degrees, 46 minutes. So they're in a conjunction. The sun is right behind them, a day or so behind that exact conjunction. Mercury is right on the other side. So there's this whole complex here in Capricorn that is all lining up at this degree. And you see that the North Node is 7 to 8 degrees Cancer. Oh, what is that? That's the new moon. So think back to January 2020, what was going on. Jupiter was here. The South Node was here. This was the beginning, right? January 2020, we all know what was going on in the world. It was really starting, and of course Saturn and Pluto together at this conjunction was the beginning of the end, right? It set the timer and hit the go button on that. It crystallized the transformational process of Pluto and a recompense, truly. So the North Node of the moon, though, was in your sign at the degree that the new moon is going to be. So this is a temporal marker for something that started, or at least was solidified at that point. And like I said, look, you can see that Chiron is just coming into Aries. Uranus is just coming into Taurus as well. Neptune is still in Pisces, of course. And Venus was in Aquarius. That's interesting, in the 8th house. So keep in mind here that this new moon is bringing to the very present experience of the Cancer person something that was the soul urge at this time, pulling everything away from all of this energy in your 7th house of Capricorn that was really having you hyper, probably situated, fixated, just concentrated on your relationships and the interpersonal relationships and your relationship to society. And there's just this quiet little voice over here that is just like, hey, this is where the soul is pulling us right now, is in this direction, okay? Now, Cancer, it is time to step. We're all doing this, right? This is not just Cancer, but it's so directly connected to who you are that you are really the avatar of this experience. So, let's just look real quick at the next 2 weeks, just to get an idea of where everything is going. So let me bring this... I'll bring this back to current, and then I'll bring it up for you, Cancer. So, and let us know how you're doing as well. Let us know what's going on in the comments. If there's anything that is really speaking to you, or if you're experiencing anything in particular that seems to really line up with this general theme here, because it's important that we share experience with each other so that we have a sense of continuity. That's really important. So we're looking at a full moon. We're eventually looking at a full moon on the 13th that is going to be very much in alignment with where that Saturn-Pluto conjunction happened to be. It was actually within a degree orb. And so this is really powerful to take a look at. So when we do the full moon report for Capricorn, you'll get a better sense of how the rest of the month is going to play out, because then the moon will be rejoining the top of your chart, connecting to all of these energies that have to do with social identity and expression. And at that point, there's also going to be the Uranus North Node experience as well, the conjunction. That's what I'm trying to say. So by the time we get to the 13th, which is the full moon, Mercury will be in your sign. Venus will be well into the last degrees of, Gemini at this point. That means she's going to be in a trine to Saturn. So, and Mercury will have come into a trine to Saturn as well. And so you see that the energy here in your 12th house of the unseen, of the astral, of the end of the line, there's something about pruning it all back, right? Down to the, pruning back the wild expansion in this area. It's very easy to get lost in the weeds in the 12th house, right? Because it's everything. And there's no discernible boundary or limitation here, and certainly no time, right? And it crosses dimensions, it crosses lifetimes and experiences at a soul level. And so it's very difficult here to establish what is, but there's something here about getting into the really strong transcendental cosmic expressions that are actually going to yield something that is in a direct relationship to Saturn in the 8th. That is like, yes, this is about, when you get into transmuting this shared energy, right? Rather than identifying with it exclusively, or being so having such a firm wall here that you don't even allow for an emotional experience to transmute. There's something here with Venus that is, and Mercury too, at this 24 to 25 degree mark in Gemini, right? We're getting pretty close to the galactic center. This is related to Orion in particular. It's about cutting back everything that is not necessary, everything that is wildly expanding in this area, and really feeling it in your senses and feeling it in, the warmth of sharing, especially when we're going to talk about an 8th house connection here, and Venus. It's very much about, there's a love and there's a devotion and a type of maternity in some ways here with Venus to lovingly cut back that which needs to be pruned. And this is really going to firmly, and same thing with Mercury in our thoughts as well, in our mind, to prune away that which is not going to yield anything, right? And this again is going to really help establish a sense of strong boundary here, but in a way that is not so strong that you collapse under it because there's no connection or no generation of resources, but you don't want it to be so flimsy here that you don't even know it exists, because otherwise you will just be taken over by all kinds of stuff in this astral realm. And when it's Venus, it's very much embodied. And in Gemini, I could see this being some really strong battles, inner battles that people may be having. So what you see about this July full moon, my friends, is that it's also a mystic rectangle with the moon, with the full moon, and the nodes, of course, with Uranus as well. So there is, even in these oppositions here, this mystic rectangle allows for so much opportunity around it. And what is that? Well, the moon in a trine to Uranus in the 11th house, right? So the moon at 22 Capricorn is in a trine here to these energies in the 11th house, right? About learning from our mistakes, possibly being ready for something spontaneous to come forward in the social setting. Mars is here now, so definitely going to be acting in the social realm, maybe making decisions, moving somewhere, doing something socially, maybe just being more present or more action oriented in the social realm. but this is one of those moments of opportunity of learning, and learning our lessons, right? Coming to learn how to do something better, right? See our success in our failures a lot of times. And for the Cancer person, having this be where Saturn, Pluto, the Sun, Mercury, all together in 2020, it's kind of bringing it around now to just be like, oh, this culmination point, and really coming through a sense of strong identity with that Cancerian nature. Really, really, really cool, actually. I mean, I know that seems so basic, but it does. I mean, I'm very excited for the Cancer person, for the most part. I think that Lilith is going to be a tricky one, and to be very clear about, where this energy is coming from, and if it truly is coming from you, what is the self-preservation that is linked to it. And are you, is this elusive understanding or this purity and understanding of who you are, is that what is influencing and inspiring you? Or are you trying to grasp something that you're never going to grasp, but you don't know it, and so you just are like doubling down on aspects of who you are? And that I think is playing out in very specific sphere. So Cancer, I'm going to leave it there for your report. Very general. The first quarter moon is going to be in Libra in your fourth house. So consider that your actual emotional connection to home, family, a sense of inner power, a sense of your private life, your personal power, really needing an outer reorganization in terms of identifying with yourself, right? You can't really let, a Cancer person, your fourth house is about equilibrium and balance and what that means. So it's going to be an interesting time. So Cancer, thank you so much for being here. I truly, truly appreciate each and every one of you so very much. So one of the things I want to share with you, so it is your month. So you are, you are eligible for the sale price for the lunar transit forecast. So for $33 US, 30 minutes of a recording, it'll be just like that, right? From new moon to full moon, right? And giving you the major themes in this first 2 weeks. You want the full lunar transit forecast, $66 for a 60-minute recording, and it looks at the entire lunar cycle in relation to your natal chart, your starseed markings, your progressed chart, all of that stuff. So that is available for Cancer people in general, Cancer rising, Cancer sun, Cancer moon. You can either book directly from catalystenergies.net. You can just scroll down to the homepage and hit request an appointment. Or you can email me directly. That's also in the description box below. And you can request the lunar transit forecast sale if you're a Cancer rising, Cancer moon, Cancer sun person. Okay, friends, thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you so very much. I will see you on the next forecast, which will be the full moon in Capricorn. Until then, bye.